An elderly couple is sharing an intimate dinner in honor of their 75th wedding anniversary. The man says softly, "Dear, there is something I must ask you. It has always bothered me that our sixth child never quite looked like the rest of our children. Now, let me assure you, these 75 years have been the most wonderful I could have hoped for, and your answer will not take all that away. But please tell me, did he have a different father?" His wife lowers her eyes, pauses for a moment, and then confesses, Yes, he did." The old man tightens, very shaken, the reality hitting him hard. Who was he? Who was the father? Again, the woman lowers her head, trying to muster the courage to finally tell her husband the truth. She says, "You?" Two redneck hunters got a pilot to fly them into the far north for elk hunting. They were quite successful in their venture and bagged 6 big bucks. The pilot came back as arranged to pick them up. They started loading their gear into the plane, including the 6 elk. But the pilot objected. Said he, "The plane can take out only 4 of your elk. You will have to leave 2 behind." They argued with him. The year before, they had shot 6, and the pilot had allowed them to put all aboard, and the plane was just the same model and capacity as this. Reluctantly, the pilot finally permitted them to put all 6 aboard. But when they attempted to take off and leave the valley where they were, the little plane could not make it, and they crashed in the wilderness. Climbing out of the wreckage, one redneck said to the other, "Do you know where we are?" "I think so," replied the other redneck. "I think this is about the same place where the plane crashed last year." A small tourist hotel was all abuzz about an afternoon wedding where the groom was 95 and the bride was 23. The groom looked pretty feeble, and the feeling was that the wedding night might kill him because his bride was a healthy, vivacious young woman. But lo and behold, the next morning, the bride came down the main staircase slowly, step by step, hanging on to the banister for dear life. She finally managed to get to the counter of the little shop in the hotel. The clerk looked really concerned. "Whatever happened to you, honey? You look like you've been wrestling an alligator." The bride groaned, hung on to the counter, and managed to speak, "Oh, God! He told me he'd been saving up for 75 years. I thought he meant his money." A bear and a rabbit were walking in the forest one day when they stumbled across a magic frog. The frog told them both they have 3 wishes, but to use them wisely. So the bear thinks for a minute and then says, "I want all the bears in this forest to be female, you know, except for me." Then the rabbit says, "I would like a motorcycle helmet." The frog asks the rabbit, "Are you sure this is what you want?" "Yes," the rabbit says, "then I will grant them." Now the bear thinks for a minute and says, "I want all the bears in the surrounding forest to be female, you know, except me." Then the rabbit thinks for a minute and says, "I would love a motorcycle." "Are you sure you want this as your second wish?" says the frog. "Yes, I do," says the rabbit. "Well then, granted," says the frog. "Now you both only have 1 wish left, so pick it wisely," says the frog. After a long wait, the bear and the rabbit are ready to make their wishes. The bear says, "I want all the bears in the world to be female, you know, except me." "Wish granted," says the frog. "How about your last wish?" says the frog. The rabbit starts up his motorcycle and puts on his helmet. Then, as he starts to take off, he says, "I want this bear here to be gay. Wish granted." There was a woman who had just lost her husband. Her friend told her that she should start dating men, as it had been a long time since she had done it. She met this great guy, and things got pretty serious. One night, when they went back to her place, they were ready to have sex when they both stripped off their clothing. The woman, however, still had her black underwear on. The man asked her why that was. She said it was because she was still in mourning over her husband, and she felt that she wasn't ready for sex and someone touching her there. The week after, the same thing happened, except this time the man had a black condom on. The woman asked why that was, and he said, "Because I want to offer my condolences." 3 people, 2 men and 1 woman, and their dogs are in the vet's waiting room. The first man's dog asked the second man's dog what he's there for. "They're putting me down." "Oh, no," says the first dog. "Why?" The second dog says, "Well, you see, I've been chasing the postman for years. Yesterday, I finally caught him and bit him, so I'm going to be put to sleep." The second dog says, well, my master just completely remodeled the inside of his house. I didn't like it because my scent wasn't anywhere anymore. So when he went to bed last night, I pissed on everything I could find to get my scent back. This morning, my master found out what I had done, so he is putting me to sleep also. The third dog said, this is my master's new girlfriend. She runs around the house all the time without her clothes. This makes me very horny. So this morning, as she was getting out of the shower, she bent over to wipe up the water on the floor. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I jumped on her and gave it to her good. The other dogs say, so that's why they're putting you to sleep? No, says the dog. She is bringing me here to get my toenails clipped. These two starving bums are walking through an alley when one of them sees a dead cat. He runs over, sits down, and starts to eat the cat, tearing the meat from its limbs. He says to the other bum, hey, I know you're hungry too. Why don't you eat some of this cat? Hell no, replies the second bum. That cat's been dead for days. He's all stiff and cold and smelly. The first bum says, okay, suit yourself, and continues to eat everything, skin, muscle, guts, all but the skeleton. A few hours later, as they are walking down the street, the first bum says, oh, I don't feel so good. I think there might have been something wrong with that cat. And just then, he pukes up a huge puddle of rotten cat flesh and guts with stomach bile mixed in, all half digested and looking like mush. The second bum sits down next to the puddle and says, now you're talking. It's been months since I had a warm meal. After living in the remote wilderness of Kentucky all his life, an old hillbilly decided it was time to visit the big city. In one of the stores, he picks up a mirror and looks in it. Not knowing what it was, he remarked, how about that? Here's a picture of my daddy. He bought the picture, but on the way home, he remembered his wife, Lizzie, didn't like his father. So he hung it in the barn, and every morning before leaving for the fields, he would go there and look at it. Lizzie began to get suspicious of these many trips to the barn. One day after her husband left, she searched the barn and found the mirror. As she looked into the glass, she fumed, so that's the ugly he's running around with. A clergyman was walking down the street when he came upon a group of about a dozen boys, all of them between 10 and 12 years of age. The group surrounded a dog. Concerned lest the boys were hurting the dog, he went over and asked, what are you doing with that dog? One of the boys replied, this dog is just an old neighborhood stray. We all want him, but only one of us can take him home. So we've decided that whichever one of us can tell the biggest lie will get to keep the dog. Of course, the Reverend was taken aback. You boys shouldn't be having a contest telling lies, he exclaimed. He then launched into a 10-minute sermon against lying, beginning, don't you boys know it's a sin to lie, and ending with, why, when I was your age, I never told a lie. There was dead silence for about a minute. Just as the Reverend was beginning to think he'd gotten through to them, the smallest boy gave a deep sigh and said, all right, give him the dog. A woman was sitting at a bar enjoying an after-work cocktail with her girlfriends when an exceptionally tall, handsome, extremely sexy young man entered. He was so striking that the woman could not take her eyes away from him. The young man noticed her overly attentive stare and walked directly toward them. Before she could offer her apologies for being so rude for staring, the young man said to her, I'll do anything, absolutely anything that you want me to do, no matter how kinky, for $100 on one condition. Flabbergasted, the woman asked what the condition was. The young man replied, you have to tell me what you want me to do in just 3 words. The woman considered his proposition for a moment, withdrew from her purse, and slowly counted out 5 $20 bills, which she gladly pressed into the young man's hand. She looked deeply into his eyes and slowly and meaningfully said, clean my house. 3 women had a very late night drinking. They left in the early morning hours and went home their separate ways. The next day, they all met and compared notes about who was drunker the night before. The first girl claims that she was the drunkest, saying, I drove straight home and walked into the house. As soon as I got through the door, I blew chunks. The second said, you think that was drunk? Hell, I got into my car and wrapped my car around the first tree I saw. I don't even have insurance." The third proclaimed, "Damn, I was the drunkest by far. When I got home, I got into a big fight with my husband, knocked a candle over, and burned the whole house down." The room was silent for a moment. Then the first girl spoke out again. "Listen, girls, I don't think you understand. Chunks is my dog." A beautiful young New York woman was so depressed that she decided to end her life by throwing herself into the ocean. But just before she could throw herself from the docks, a handsome young sailor stopped her. "You have so much to live for," said the sailor. "Look, I'm off to Europe tomorrow, and I can stow you away on my ship. I'll take care of you, bring you food every day, and keep you happy." With nothing to lose, combined with the fact that she had always wanted to go to Europe, the woman accepted. That night, the sailor brought her aboard and hid her in a lifeboat. From then on, every night he would bring her 3 sandwiches and make love to her until dawn. 3 weeks later, she was discovered by the captain during a routine inspection. "What are you doing here?" asked the captain. "I have an arrangement with one of the sailors," she replied. "He brings me food and I get a free trip to Europe. Plus, he's screwing me." "He certainly is," replied the captain. "This is the Staten Island ferry." A girl asks her boyfriend to come over Friday night and have dinner with her parents. This being a big event, the girl tells her boyfriend that after dinner she would like to go out and do it for the first time. Well, the boy is ecstatic, but he has never done it before, so he takes a trip to the pharmacist to get some protection. The pharmacist helps the boy for about an hour. He tells the boy everything there is to know about protection and doing it. At the register, the pharmacist asks the boy how many he'd like to buy, a 3-pack, a 10-pack, or a family pack. The boy insists on the family pack because he thinks he will be very busy, it being his first time and all. That night, the boy shows up at the girl's parents' house and meets his girlfriend at the door. "Oh, I'm so excited for you to meet my parents. Come on in." The boy goes inside and is taken to the dinner table where the girl's parents are seated. The boy quickly offers to say grace and bows his head. A minute passes, and the boy still deep in prayer with his head down. 10 minutes pass, and still no movement from the boy. Finally, after 20 minutes with his head down, the girlfriend leans over and whispers to her boyfriend, "I had no idea you were so religious." The boy turns and whispers back, "I had no idea your father was a pharmacist." A newlywed couple was settling into their honeymoon suite when the groom, a big, burly guy, tossed his pants to his bride and smirked. "Here, put these on." She slipped them on, but the waistband was so big it could fit 2 of her. "I can't wear your pants," she laughed. "Exactly," he said, puffing out his chest. "And don't you forget it, I'm the one who wears the pants in this family." Without missing a beat, she picked up her lacy panties and tossed them at him. "All right, big guy, your turn." He tried, but they barely made it past his knees. Frustrated, he huffed, "I can't get into these." She crossed her arms and grinned. "Exactly. And that's how it's going to stay until your attitude changes." A guy heard about this amazing new weight loss company. All his friends tell him there's nothing like it for losing a quick 5 pound. He calls the company and orders their 5-day, 5 pounds weight loss program. The next day, there's a knock on the door, and there stands before him a voluptuous, athletic 19-year-old woman dressed in nothing but a pair of running shoes and a sign around her neck. She introduces herself as a representative of the weight loss company. The sign reads, "If you can catch me, you can have me." Without a second thought, he takes off after her. A few miles later, puffing and puffing, he finally gives up. The same girl shows up for the next 4 days, and the same thing happens. On the 5th day, he weighs himself and is delighted to find he has lost 5 pounds as promised. He calls the company and orders their 5-day 10-pound program. The next day, there's a knock at the door, and there stands the most stunning, beautiful, sexy woman he has ever seen in his life. She is wearing nothing but running shoes and a sign around her neck that reads, "If you catch me, you can have me." Well, he's out the door after her like a shot. This girl is in excellent shape, and he does his best, but no such luck. So for the next 4 days, the same routine happens with him gradually getting in better and better shape. Much to his delight, on the 5th day when he weighs himself, he discovers that he has lost another 10 pounds as promised. He decides to go for broke and calls the company to order the 7-day 25 lbs program. "Are you sure?" asks the representative on the phone. "This is our most rigorous program." "Absolutely," he replies. "I haven't felt this good in years." The next day there's a knock at the door, and when he opens it, he finds a huge, muscular guy standing there wearing nothing but pink running shoes and a sign around his neck that reads, "If I catch you, you are mine." Lawyers should never ask a Southern grandma a question if they aren't prepared for the answer. In a trial, a Southern small-town prosecuting attorney called his first witness, a grandmotherly elderly woman, to the stand. He approached her and asked, "Mrs. Jones, do you know me?" She responded, "Why, yes, I do know you, Mr. Williams. I've known you since you were a young boy, and frankly, you've been a big disappointment to me. You lie, you cheat on your wife, and you manipulate people and talk about them behind their backs. You think you're a big shot when you haven't the brains to realize you never will amount to anything more than a 2-bit paper pusher. Yes, I know you." The lawyer was stunned. Not knowing what else to do, he pointed across the room and asked, "Mrs. Jones, do you know the defense attorney?" She again replied, "Why, yes, I do. I've known Mr. Bradley since he was a youngster, too. He's lazy, bigoted, and he has a drinking problem. He can't build a normal relationship with anyone, and his law practice is one of the worst in the entire state. Not to mention, he cheated on his wife with 3 different women. One of them was your wife. Yes, I know him." The defense attorney almost died. The judge asked both counselors to approach the bench and, in a very quiet voice, said, "If either of you idiots asks her if she knows me, I'll send you both to the electric chair." These 2 girls were in a movie cinema hall when one leaned over to the other one and whispered in her ear, "The guy beside me is masturbating. What should I do?" She looks at her in horror and says, "Just ignore him, duh." She says, "I can't," and the other one says, "Why the hell not?" And she softly replies, "Because he's using my hand." This guy is having an affair with a married woman, and her husband comes home early from work one day. She jumps up and tells the man to go into the bathroom to hide. Just as he gets in the bathroom and she hides his clothes under the bed, the husband opens the door and comes in. He asks, "What the hell are you doing?" Thinking quickly, the wife says, "Waiting for you?" The suspicious husband looks at her in disbelief and says, "But you're naked." Again, the woman says, "Yeah, I was waiting for you." The husband relaxes and says, "Hold on, I'm going to jump in the shower. I'll be back in a flash." The wife tries to stop him, but he just ignores her and rushes for the bathroom. When he opens the bathroom door, there is a naked man jumping around and clapping. The husband asks, "What in the hell are you doing?" He replied, "I'm the exterminator, and your wife called saying you guys had a problem with moths." The husband looks him over and says, "But you're naked." The man looks down, jumps in surprise, and mutters, "Them little bastards." A couple was invited to a swanky Halloween party by a family friend, in which all attendees were required to wear a mask. The wife got a terrible headache and told her husband to go to the party alone and to make sure to say hello to her family. He, being a devoted husband, protested, but she argued and said she was going to take some aspirin and go to bed, and there was no need for his good time to be spoiled by not going. So he took his costume and away he went. The wife, after sleeping soundly for about an hour, woke without pain and, as it was still early, decided to go to the party. As her husband didn't know what her costume was, she thought she would have some fun by watching her husband to see how he acted when she was not with him. So she joined the party and soon spotted her husband in his costume, cavorting around on the dance floor, dancing with every nice chick he could and copping a little feel here and a little kiss there. His wife went up to him, and being a rather seductive babe herself, he left his new partner high and dry and devoted his time to her. She let him go as far as he wished, naturally, since he was her husband. After more drinks, he finally whispered a little proposition in her ear, and she agreed. So off they went to one of the cars and had passionate intercourse in the back seat. Just before unmasking at midnight, she slipped away and went home and put the costume away and got into bed, wondering what kind of explanation he would make up for his outrageous behavior. She was sitting up reading when he came in, so she asked what kind of time he had. "Oh, the same old thing. You know I never have a good time when you're not there." Then she asked, "Did you dance much?" He replied, "I'll tell you, I never even danced one dance. When I got there, I met Pete, Bill Brown, and some other guys, so we went into the spare room and played poker all evening." "You must have looked really silly wearing that costume playing poker all night," she said with unashamed sarcasm. "Actually, I gave my costume to your brother. Apparently, he had the time of his life." A doctor was addressing a large audience in Tampa. "The material we put into our stomachs been enough to have killed most of us sitting here years ago. Red meat is awful. Soft drinks corrode your stomach lining. Chinese food is loaded with MSG. High-fat diets can be disastrous. And none of us realizes the long-term harm caused by the germs in our drinking water. But there is one thing that is the most dangerous of all, and we all have, or will, eat it. Can anyone tell me what food it is that causes the most grief and suffering for years after eating it?" After several seconds of quiet, a 75-year-old man in the front row raised his hand and softly said, "Wedding cake." One day, a government worker was digging through his office drawers when suddenly he came upon a magic lamp. "Oh, come on, I'm sure there's one buried in your desk, too." Since he'd heard these jokes before, he knew that he had to rub the lamp and make the genie come out. So he rubbed the lamp and, oh, surprise, out popped a genie. The genie asked, as genies will, "What is your first wish?" The government worker thought about it for a second, then replied, "I would like to be rich." So the genie granted him his wish, and poof, the man was surrounded by piles of money rivaling the heaps of even Martha Stewart and Bill Gates. Since the government worker knew the whole wish process, the genie didn't even have to ask for number 2 before he said, "My second wish is to be on an island with beautiful women surrounding me and obeying my every command." And poof, he was there. Then the government worker, or as I like to call him, civil servant, decided on his third wish. "I don't want to do any work ever again," and poof, ubiquitous, ironic twist, he was back in his office. An old woman took her husband to the doctor. The doctor checked the husband's pulse, then told the woman, "I'm sorry, your husband is dead." The woman was shocked. "I don't believe it. Are you sure?" "I want to be absolutely sure. Are there any other tests you can do?" The doctor responded, "I'm quite sure, but if you'd like, we do have some alternative tests that we can perform." "Yes, I have to be absolutely certain." The doctor shrugged, sat down on a stool, and yelled out the door, "Send in Mrs. Fluffkens." In walked a black house cat. The cat jumped onto the examination table, walking carelessly on the unresponsive body of the woman's husband. The cat swatted at the man's face a few times, then jumped off the table, meowed twice, and walked out of the room. "Just as I thought," said the doctor. "Dead. Send in Walter." In walked a Labrador retriever. The dog walked over to the woman's husband, smelled his hand, which was dangling from the table. The dog turned to the doctor, his big expressive eyes raised up to meet the doctor's gaze. Then the dog shook his head and walked out of the room. "Just as I thought," said the doctor. "Dead. Send in Colin." Suddenly, a towering Aussie in safari gear burst into the room. A pair of binoculars hung from a strap around his neck. He pulled them up to his eyes, looked at the husband for a second, then turned to the old woman and yelled, "Oi, bitch, your husband's fucking dead!" and walked out of the room. "Thank you, Colin," said the doctor, making a note on his clipboard, then yelled down the hall, "Ma'am, can you come in here?" An elderly woman walked slowly into the room, peered through her thick glasses at the body of the husband on the exam table, shook her head, then sat down at a typewriter in the corner, clacked away at the keys for a few seconds. Ding. She pulled a card out of the typewriter and handed it to the doctor. The doctor looked at the card. "Dead? Thank you, ma'am. That'll be all." The doctor suddenly hopped up from his stool. He picked the stool up by the legs and swung it over his head, crashing the seat down on the body of the husband. The husband's lifeless body flailed under the impact, then settled back to rest on the table. The doctor set the stool down, then jotted something on his clipboard. "I'm sorry to inform you that your husband is definitely dead." He handed her a piece of paper detailing the test results. "Take this to the front desk, and they'll check you out." The old woman took the slip of paper to the front desk. The receptionist looked it over, and giving the old woman a sad look, said, "I'm sorry for your loss. That will be $32,000. $32,000? That can't possibly be right. I've never paid that much to see the doctor." The receptionist looked over the paper again. "Well, it's $100 copay for the doctor's visit, but then it shows you also requested a CAT scan, a lab report, a colonzooscopy, a mammogram, and a stool analysis." A group of guys are on their way to a party, but couldn't quite remember the address to the house. "I'm sure this is the one," said the driver. "Well, I have got to go to the bathroom so bad," replied one of the others. "I'll go knock on the door and check. If it's the wrong house, at least I'll get to a toilet." So he gets out and walks to the front door. He rings it once. No answer. He rings it again. Still no answer. So he thinks, this is a big house, a big party. Maybe the party is outside, in the backyard. So he walks around the house to the back. There was no one out there either. As he approached the back door, he was surprised to find it unlocked and open. There was obviously no one home, so he figured he'd just quietly run inside real quick and use their bathroom. No one would know. So he goes inside, but he can't find the bathroom anywhere. So he quickly ran up the stairs and searched till finally, as he opened a door to a small room, he was amazed to find a golden toilet. He had never seen anything like it, but remembering that he was in a stranger's house and that they could, at time, return home, he quickly did his business and walked out. As he got in the car, he excitedly told his friends of the amazing golden toilet. They laughed in disbelief at his crazy tale. They pulled out of the driveway arguing about it. They argued the whole way to the party. A couple of hours later, on the way home from the party, they drive past the house with the golden toilet, and the guy insists on stopping so he could prove to his friends that these people really did have a golden toilet. So they agree to check it out. So they all walk up to the front door and ring the doorbell, and a woman answers the door. "Excuse me, ma'am, but could you please let me show my friends here your golden toilet? They don't believe me." "So you're the guy," the woman replies, then yells to her husband in the house, "Honey, here's the guy that pooped in your tuba." A man goes to a restaurant and orders a chicken dish. By the time the food is ready and he is about to eat, the waiter comes back and says, "Sir, I'm afraid there has been a mistake. You see, that police officer who is sitting at the next table is a regular customer of ours, and he usually orders the same dish. The problem with this is that this is the last chicken in the house. I'm afraid I'll have to take this dish to him and arrange for another dish for you." The guy gets really upset and refuses to give up his food. The waiter walks over to the other table and explains the situation to the officer. A few minutes later, the officer walks over to the man's table and says, "Listen up, pal. That is my chicken you're about to eat, and I'll warn you, whatever you do to that chicken, I'll do the same to you. You pull out one of its legs, and I'll pull out one of yours. You break one of its wings, and I'll break one of your arms." The man calmly looks at the chicken, then sticks his middle finger in the and pulls it out and licks it. He then gets up, drops his pants, bends over, and says, "Your turn." An 80-year-old lady was being interviewed by a local news station because she had just gotten married for the 4th time. The interviewer began to ask her questions about her life, why she has decided to get remarried at 80, and for some information about her new husband. "My husband is a funeral director," she answered. "That's interesting," the reporter replied. The reporter was then curious about her previous 3 husbands and what their professions had been. After a few minutes of reflection, the woman smiled and answered proudly. She explained that in her 20s she married a banker, in her 40s a circus ringmaster, a preacher in her 60s, and now, in her 80s, a funeral director. The reporter was unsure how to process her answer and then asked why she married 4 men with such different lives and career choices. The woman once again smiled and explained, "I married the first for the money, the second for the show, the third to prepare myself, and the fourth to go."